Let's go and build something, in fact, and I'm going to show you how I build a software. And we start from backend. Most of our work is done in the backend side, and we don't create something from front end. We don't create something from mobile app. We just always start with the backend, and then everything else would be much more easier. Now, again, one tip, I see a lot of mistake happens. People do the front end with mock data until the backend is ready, and then the backend changes, and this thing's like adds like 3 weeks of work. Versus if everybody worked on the backend in the first place and they had it done, they didn't have to go through the all this back and forth. Let's go to the code, in fact, and what I'm going to build today is a fruit management module. Okay, I didn't think about this beforehand. I'm just going to show you how much of a product I can build in as much as this video length goes. Before that, let's go and take a look at our code structure a bit. We see that we have a backend folder, large backend folder, and inside that we have a UI folder, like UI kind of inside the backend. And it's a React app. We have different configurations for different platforms. Then there is a make file to create, let's say, a different platform, different targets like Mac server, Linux server, GitHub pages, iOS APK, pre-Android, and all these configurations. And all these tools help us to build for different platforms. Now, there's another folder here called Cordova. This make file kind of builds the UI and then copies it into it, and then generates the APK file and all those things, and also compiles the Golang. And we have an artifact folder, and the artifact folder is all those binaries and even JavaScript SDK. And then the CMD, we can have as many as applications we want. So now, if you look at this, you see like there's Academy and there's Fireback, both in the same project. It's because the modules are that well separated. You can have different types of applications built, which the binaries are even different, and sell it as a different product. So, for example, if you have 3 major modules, you can create 3 different applications or put all of them as one single application. And this is what I do here. So I built Fireback and then Academy. But also, you can separate it totally and then have your own project. I'm going to add this fruits management system into the existing project for simplicity. So let's begin a folder and call it fruits. And then inside that, I'm going to create the fruits module 2.yml. Now, it is surprising that I didn't start with the like Golang code or front-end code. I just started this definition. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call it entities, and I would define fruit, like just a fruit. And then let's say the fields are name, like fruit's name, type string, and then let's say name color, and then type again string. So if you look at this fruits folder, there's nothing inside it, but immediately when I save this file, this auto generation system will read this file, like module 2, fruits module 2, and it's gonna go and create a bunch of files for me automatically. So what are these basically? These are the functions and all the necessary tools to build the fruits module. And as you see, like there is seeder, there is like querying, validations, build, CLI tools, definitions in the proto. Let's go here, like fruits for gRPC connection, and then querying and then fruits entity. What we added inside the fruits module 2 was only 2 fields, name and color. But now here we see like over 14 fields. These are all fireback fields which are being automatically added to the entity for managing the access and to have it a real working scenario. So it manages who's the parent of this fruit, who is what is the rank of it in the database, when it's created, when it's formatted, linker and visibility, and which workspace it belongs to, which we will go through it in another videos. It's not for this one. So far we have this name and color, and I want to execute this as fast as I can. So I go to the module, and it has created for me some kind of helper. Then I would say all fruit permissions. And every module comes with a set of permissions, all right? Who can create, who can delete, who can update, who can query, and then the fruit root permission, you have every permission there. So I would like to delete this, and then I want to add this HTTP handler, and it is called create fruit router. So the router is basically all those endpoints which are being called through the Postman or your web client, and all of those are also created. Now let's go and add another line, and it's called entity fruit entity. It is our database entity, what's going to be stored on a database. And in the end, we have something CLI-FN, and that's going to add CLI support. And we will see it in a bit. How does this thing work? Okay, the last thing we want to do, but now I'm just going to add it to the Academy project, but for a client, obviously it's a separate code base, and in their project will be added. We're just going to go and simply add the fruit.module setup, fruits module setup, and this is it. Now notice when I save this, it's going to be building it. And we're going to go to the terminal, write make mac dev. Okay, it gave us an error. Academy.go undefined, line 38. I didn't see this. Academy core. Excuse me for a second. I'm going to just comment it. We're going to make it. And when we made it, it's already, I have a special code that calls it as A, but this is very specific. And we're going to see what fruits module now does for us. So if you take a look at it here, you see there is something called fruit. I'm going to zoom in a bit, and so we can see it more clearly. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to type a fruit, and it's going to bring the comments for that. So fireback has been generated the create system. Let's say call it fruit help, and I could create a fruit on a database by just saying apple and color red. And if I go back and query, I will see this apple red has been created. Now we can test this using, in fact, Postman. Let's go into the passports. I want to say test, and it's in root, and it's workspace, and then test, and then test. So basically everything is test. Now it has generated a token for me, and I'm gonna go and create basic fruits call. I put my token here, and it should be working. Now we need to start the server, obviously, something I didn't do. And we see the HTTP request has been completely working. Now, the definition file, fruits module 2, could go much more complex. What it could do is basically we could have another entity called fruit type, and then fields would be name, title, then type string. Then we could say name type, another field, what type of fruit is this, and then type 1, and then target equals fruit type entity. Then we needed to import that. Import list would be, I would quickly check in another sample. Yes, modules drive proto, and I'm gonna type in this one, fruits, and again, fruit type definitions.dino.proto. So if I save that now, it's interesting that it kind of edits all those files by itself. And we will have type here added, fruit type, as we see here. And instead of like defining the type inside this body, we are importing another entity. And the another entity kind of being a selection, a combo box for us. And it's all managed by fireback. So let's go and add this module really quick. And for everything we add, we need to have fruit type CLI-FN. Again, I'm gonna duplicate this and fruit type entity and all fruit type permissions and create fruit type router. I'm gonna save this and we will see that how does this work. Now the other entity has been added and it could work as like the types. Well, the features here are kind of let me do this. Features here are limitless. In fact, let's say I want to go and create another fruit, which I could do from Postman, obviously, but for easy demonstration from here, and name like orange and then color orange. And then I'm gonna query them and I see like apple and orange. Now we have another thing like features implemented automatically, like kind of a selectors for us. Let's say items per page 1, and then I just have one orange. Or I could write query equal to name equal let's say orange, and it just brings me orange. If I could say apple, it brings me apple. And another thing again here automatically generated, let's say it's a remove option. So I could remove them like ID, what I want to remove, and let's call it the Apple ID, like automatically generated. And okay, it says one record has been deleted. And if I go and query them again, I just see the orange. There is another interesting option here. It's called sitters. Sitters could export some content from every entity. I'm gonna write help and let's say call it file and then call it fruits.yml. It has been exported into the fruits.yml, and we have this thing exported from the system. Let's go and take a quick look at the Academy. In fact, this is much larger definition and it has tons of more files generated for it. Like see fireback generated all these files. And of course, a little bit of coding also happens because not every scenario is covered by this. But we will go deeper and see what is covered actually in other videos. Here you can see like the question bank is another entity for the question entity. And then it also supports array of items. So you can have array of things inside the entity. Now, it gets even more interesting by having the option to nest things. Like there's an array and inside it there is an array and inside it there is a choice from database. And remember one thing, all of these things are happening on a relational database. So this is not a JSON you just put in stuff there and then you get into trouble. No, it's gonna generate a normalized code. And this is where the most value in fact is. So the features are endless. If I wanted to go like seeders, you could export this content and then put it inside the module itself. And when you are using it, like for example, currencies module, I want to go currency and query them. You see, like it's empty. There is no currencies, but it comes with a seeder. And then if I write list, I see there is a currencies.yml and I could sync them. And when I sync them, like all those currencies are available inside the currencies. Okay, we need to start it. Where is it? Currency. Get currencies. Unfortunately, it's a mistake, spelling mistake. But the point is, it's gonna bring all these currencies down for us. So we didn't even think about it at all. That's how it's gonna work. Now, the beauty of the system is not only here, but rather when we are done with this, for example, we have the currencies module created, we can go and do something interesting. In the front end, I can generate the SDK for JavaScript. So let's go and do this. When I type make.js, what it does is kind of converts all of these definitions into JavaScript code, which can be run by React or pure JavaScript. Now, only pure JavaScript and React are supported. It could easily support Angular, Vue.js if we wanted to write some coding for it, but it doesn't have a business value for me personally, so I didn't add yet. And when we go to this, like release TS.js, we will see that, oh my God, all of those components now are having React hooks generated. For example, use delete unit. And then I'm gonna go in somewhere like virtual account entity manager. The front end is a lot of things we're gonna discuss at some point. But you see, for example, use post virtual account. I'm not gonna go and write like HTTP fetch or any library. I'm just gonna go import this virtual thing from Academy Tools, and I'm gonna call it. By calling that, it's just gonna do all of those things behind the scenes, and it is really modifiable. It's not like you're limited to this. You could modify it, but as you see, the entity manager just only have 3 function calls, and with that function calls, all the screen works. It saves like tons of times, and everywhere else looks extremely similar. So if I go like about 20 pages, and look, everything almost looks like the same structure, same amount of code. And again, there's a common entity manager which sets some configuration again and again and again. If you go through all these items, we will see all of them are unified. This is not the power of the front end. In fact, this is the power of the fireback, which is generating all these hooks. So I don't need to think about, oh my God, how I'm going to handle this, how I'm going to do the validations, how am I going to do this and that. So it just extremely makes everything unified and fast to develop. Now, when I'm done with building this module, I can simply say make Mac, for example, server, and it's going to generate the binaries into the artifact folder. Not to mention that the fireback itself comes with the configuration, fireback configuration. So you could set a lot of configurations inside this file. You don't need to go and modify the source code of the backend. The thing is, the client's not gonna come to me and say, oh my God, how can we like change the port? How can we change the database configuration? All of these things are inside the YAML file. You can just go and modify it yourself. Now, if you want to go to the features, that would be a lot. For example, roles, permissions, workspaces. I'm going to do another video on them. But this is kind of the idea. You get it. Like, for example, fireback could generate this Polish B1 seeder content, like by defining this thing like as an exam. You see like all of those large YAML things, because it's so much unified, it could import this and with this much of a code, exam from FAS system. Okay, I'm going to show quickly and insert exam. So with this much of a code, basically, like from here to here, like basically very small function. And if you know, like in languages like Golang and C, things are much more explicit. Like there are more lines than like JavaScript, but it's all like being added to the database, and it works perfectly fine. Let's say Academy Desktop, real quick from the end product. You see, if we go, like we have this kind of questions and like many different type of questions. Let's go quickly start an exam. It is complicated software from that perspective. And it would take like months to create such examination software if it was not with the fireback. Now you see like all the structures and correct things in the database and auto-generating things and having the relations thought through beforehand. It's going to save tons of time and add a lot of quality. Not to mention, and if you go, for example, VA, like it's another module, is very similar. It just has an extra commit transaction. If you go to VT, like it doesn't have them because it's a different kind of permission on this one. It should be worked with another modules. And error messages all are translated, everything. Like when you are getting date and format, it's all like kind of formatted, like created date is formatted based on the language. And yeah, basically this is how I build things extremely fast. So when I want to build a software, I just go and think, how should this be stored? I define it, I save it, I have the back in a day or two, and then I start adding like gradually those very specific functionalities and export them into the HTTP and CLI. Please continue this playlist. If you're interested, I will discuss it more details inside, and we'll see the features one by one. But this is all for an overall. Thank you so much for staying this much, and I hope to see you very soon. Contact me if you have any questions or if you want to start your software today.